having the foundation of personal, I think, really, really helps with professional. I don't know if it's the other way. I don't know. I would ask you, does being super professionally developed help when it comes to personal development?
On this podcast, Next Level University, the NLUians out there, we want a holistic life. We don't want to be just righty or lefty. We don't want just a great marriage. We want a great marriage and a great career. We don't want just a great career and a terrible marriage. We want to be healthy, wealthy, and in love.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode number 1661, Can Procrastination Be Good? I actually sent the episode to a client who is struggling with that. Today, for episode number 1662, Doubling Down on Your Strengths or Working on Your Weaknesses. So you've been on a lot of podcasts. I've been on a lot of podcasts. And I've noticed that oftentimes I will go on a podcast that is maybe business focused. And the host of that podcast will have very little personal development in terms of connection with their emotions, understanding their ego, understanding their triggers, vulnerability, any of that. It's really hard to go to a vulnerable place with someone who hasn't worked on themselves internally. But I've also gone on a lot of shows that are super spiritual and super, I would say, super self-improvement and personal growth. But when I talk to them, I can tell that behind the scenes, there's not a lot of organization, and there's not a lot of strategy, and there's not a lot of long-term focus. And that's where I started. I started on that end, so I'm not making that wrong. But our goal in today's episode is to talk about that. Maybe you're really good at personal development. You've worked diligently on yourself, and you understand your traumas and your triggers, and you are comfortable with your ego, and you're vulnerable and all that. Or maybe you're on the other end where you're really good at professional development. You're dialed in, you're strategic, you're organized. I am not that. I am far more the first one than that. But at the beginning of this journey, I don't really think I had much of either. When I started, I went all in on personal development. I went all in on, why am I triggered? What do I not like about this part of my ego? What is this? What does this mean? Why? What? How? All of that. And then eventually, as Alan and I got closer and closer and worked together more and more, then I started to come up on my professional development. But odds are you're probably really good at one. Odds are you're probably better at one than you are the other. And the goal in this episode is to figure out, what do you do about that?
So the idea underneath this is we are all righty or lefty. So everyone think of their own. I'm a righty. Kev, also righty?
I am a righty.
Okay, for some reason, there's certain things that are lefty. Like, are you lefty in hockey? I'm
lefty in nothing.
Oh, for some reason, I'm lefty in hockey and snowboarding. I have no idea why.
When I tore my labrum, I tore my left shoulder when I was grappling back in the day, and I taught myself how to fight southpaw, which is technically lefty. So, kind of. I can fight both ways, lefty or righty.
There you go. The weakness turned into a strength.
100%.
Now that your shoulder's semi-back.
No, it's good. We're good.
Oh,
We're
okay,
a well-oiled machine.
Nice. Okay, so everyone think of what they are. So I'm righty, Kevin's righty. I'm going to call righty professional development in this analogy. It's a metaphor. So many of our listeners, I want to use us as an example, but I want you thinking of you. And the reason I want to use us as an example, there's two prefaces to this discussion. The first one is, we're probably going to be overly generalizing ourselves a little bit here, just to make the point. So don't read too far into that. It's not like we were all or nothing. Okay? The second piece is, everyone is stronger in one that I've met. Everyone that I've met is either personally developed that needs more professional development, or they're professionally developed and needs more personal development. And so what I want every listener to walk away with today is the understanding of which one is your strength and which one could use work. Because you'd be amazed at what you could do if you're ambidextrous. So like on the basketball court, when a defender could figure out that I can't drive to the basket with my left hand, they would just stay on my right and I'd be screwed. So I had to learn how to do this weird hook shot thing, and what I should have done is just actually practice with my left. The point that I'm making, though, is that if you are overly dominant on one, and this is what I've found too. So I have mentors that are multimillionaires, and they're very professionally developed, 12 out of 10. But their marriages suffer, their family life suffers. They often are divorced. They're not really connected to their emotions. They think everyone else is emotional, which I think has some truth to it. But really, what it is, instead of everyone else is emotional, what if you're just not connected to your emotions, right? And so that's the person who's professionally developed but not personally developed. And I went to college with a lot of those people. And again, I'm generalizing, so be careful of the generalizations. But to prove the point, I think it's important. Then there's these people that I meet that are heart-driven, they're incredible, they're well-developed, they're emotionally intelligent, they're mature, they have self-awareness through the roof. They don't even think they do, which is hilarious. They're humble. They're hardworking. They're holistic, but they just don't win in their career. This has always bothered me, Kev. Why don't heart-driven people win in the economy? It's always bothered me. Now, again, generalization, please don't overtake what I just said. Some people that are heart-driven and emotionally intelligent do actually win in their career. And believe it or not, in the 21st century, I'm finding that the leaders who are both are like the most powerful in terms of influence and positive impact. And I aspire to be that. So all of you already know this intuitively if you've been listening to Kevin and I for a long time. Kevin was more personally growth-oriented, inner work, self-awareness, talking about his emotions, talking about vulnerability, talking about humility, talking about his character, focused on the man that he becomes. For me, prior to 26, prior to my car accident, prior to my quarter-life crisis transformation, I was all professional development. The way I say it in other podcasts is, I was an achiever who was always improvement-oriented. Everything I did, I improved, but I never improved on self. I wasn't focused on self-improvement. I was focused on improvement of skills, improvement of craft, improvement in writing, reading, math, science, improvement in academics, improvement in snowboarding, basketball, video games, whatever it is. So I was super achievement-oriented, super improvement-oriented, but it wasn't self-improvement. So I would achieve at the expense of fulfillment. My relationships usually weren't as good as my career. Kev, I think, was the opposite. And so again, overgeneralization, but we drove to 5. So he was personally well-developed for the most part.
Well, in quotations, well.
Well, right? And I was professionally developed. And you do need both to succeed if you want to succeed holistically. If you just want to be successful in the economy, you really don't need the personal development side, unfortunately. You really don't. And that's very clear if you look at some of what's going on in the globe. And if you, but what I will say is, if you want to be successful in your intimate relationship,
Definitely.
if you want to be fulfilled as a human being, if you want to be a great parent or a great friend or a great mother, father, daughter, whatever it is, you need personal development. You do. And so the question here becomes, which one are you? And how do we work on the other one? Because if what you wanted was what you needed, you'd already have it. I playfully say, if you want a coach, you probably need a therapist. That was me. If you want a therapist, you probably need a coach. Kev had a therapist before I did. Honestly, you should have both. I don't want to say should, but I recommend having both. I had dozens of mentors and coaches, but I didn't have any therapists until my 30s. And that's been tremendously powerful for me because it got me to look inward. That's what all our calls are. It's all about inner stuff. We don't talk about the economy on my therapy calls. But with my mentors and coaches, that's all it was. Robotics companies, tech companies, how does it work? Business, acumen, finance, org structure, organization, prudence, discipline, long-term thinking. That's all I ever talked about with those people. We weren't talking about their marriages. I could just tell their marriages weren't good. That actually is one of the reasons why I moved on from some of my mentors. I realized they don't have the life I want. So on this podcast, Next Level University, the NLUians out there, we want a holistic life. We don't want to be just righty or lefty. We don't want just a great marriage. We want a great marriage and a great career. We don't want just a great career and a terrible marriage. We want to be healthy, wealthy, and in love. And the only way to do that is to identify which one's your strength, continue working on it, and identify which one's your weakness, and really focus on that, because it's not a natural focus.
Yeah.
Kev,
And you don't think there's benefits to it. I think that's the other thing, is if you look at someone and say, oh, that person's super emotional because they're in touch with their emotions, and you villainize that, you're never going to want that for yourself. And if you look at someone who's like very dialed in, and they always show up, they're always put together, they're super organized, and you say, oh my goodness, that sounds exhausting, you're probably not going to want to do more of that.
you're never going to become what you villainize.
Yeah.
And you and I have been each other's, I guess, savior, for lack of better phrasing, in many ways, because we learned how to value one another, which made us unvillainize the other side.
Next Level Nation, what is happening? If you've thought to yourself, I want to try coaching, but you don't really know where to start, group coaching would be a wonderful place for you. That's really why we created it in the first place. We start a new round every 90 days. So if you're hearing this, go to the website, nextleveluniverse.com, and we have the landing page where you can actually hold your spot right now. Even if there's a group going on right now, you can still lock your spot for the next one. The biggest thing that we've seen is as we get closer and closer to the date, unfortunately, some people end up missing. The group fills up and they can't do it, and then they end up regretting that. So please head over to the website. The link will be in the show notes, and we would love to see you there. Well, I think we were willing to admit that the other person had something that we valued.
Yeah.
And it was like, you had success and maybe I had relationships. I was good with relationships. People liked me, whatever. Or the emotional intelligence side, or the vulnerability, whatever. But at least we had the courage to say, well, it can definitely be triggering to spend time with someone on the opposite end. But if they have results that you value, I think it's worth it, as long as it's aligned, as long as they're not toxic, and as long as they're aligned, the type of person that they are. Their character is aligned. You can pick up a lot by spending time around someone, positive and negative. But if they have results that you want, I think it would be very, very beneficial to spend more time. And that's why social media is so challenging, because you don't really get to see what the person's really like. So you don't know if they're behind the scenes, they're dialed in. Just because they're frolicking on the beach doesn't mean that's all they do.
In. Yeah.
That might be a half hour of their day.
Right. I know some people that are their entire social media posts are lifestyle, understandable.
Of course.
But behind the scenes, they're absolute animals, just dialed in.
Yeah,
they do not miss a trick. But then I've seen the opposite too. There's this one guy, I went on his podcast, keep it anonymous. He looks the most dialed in dude in the world, and I know behind the scenes he's not. I just know it. And that's the problem, is it's not until you get to know someone. And that's why mentors and coaches and therapists are so powerful, because you build a relationship that's deeper than social media. You build a relationship that's deeper than hanging out at a wedding. And so you get to know, oh, that's why he's so successful.
Mm.
I always, and again, I'm weird, so preface, but like I always find the three things that made someone successful. Every time I meet someone, I'm like, what are the three things that like made most of their 80% of their results? That's like a thing I do. So Emilia's father is a really successful entrepreneur. I found the three. Unbelievable at relationship building, super good at negotiation, loves projects. Everything he buys, he turns into more value and sells it.
Mm.
That's it. Honestly, if you took those three, and I would say this to him too, he wouldn't be where he is. You can look at where someone got, and you can reverse engineer. Maybe this is a me thing, but you can look at what got them there. And you can also look at what created all the results, good and bad. And by the way, good and bad is relative based on what you value, right? Some people don't really need it. Maybe some people don't want a great marriage. I don't know. I'm not one of them. I want a great marriage. So when I was a kid, I would look around, right? And I would try to understand, like, okay, this person is pretending to be successful when they're not. and they're not successful. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, why aren't they successful? I had to know.
That's more of a you thing for sure.
Yeah, that's a me thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we do at NLU, hopefully, is we take these distinctions and bring them to people so they can have them too. But I wanted to bring this up, Kevin. I was a little scared to do it, but I think it'll be good. You and I talked about your resume yesterday.
Yes.
So again, from the frame of personal development, professional development, I know we got to go in 9 minutes, Kev. 5, really. Kevin and I were talking about this yesterday because we were preparing for this episode today and masterminding about it. And Kev was saying, brother, I'll let you share the story. But remember, Kevin is lefty, meaning he was focused on character and who he was as a person and personal development, not professional development. I was very focused on professional development, not emotional maturity or emotional intelligence or any of that stuff. So I was the achiever, professionally developed. Again, generalization. Kevin was the character, self-awareness, that kind of thing.
But even back then, I think the resume I showed you was probably from, oh man. Well, it said 2013 to current. This was probably from like 2015. So it was like 9 years ago, so I was like 25 at this point. And there wasn't much good on there. So there was 3 things I said. No.
Yeah, it was 2 pages long, so
well,
good for you.
I didn't
know. A lot
know.
of spacing. A lot of
I
good
Googled
spacing
it.
on there.
I Googled it, and it probably said it should be a page or 2 page, whatever. So I tried to make it as long as it was supposed supposed to be. But yeah, no, I did not have a very. You would never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, hire me based on my resume, because I didn't have anything. I didn't go to college. I didn't have any notable jobs. I didn't have anything of impressive nature, but I did have a good personality, which I think was from the personal development side. But even back then, I wasn't. Was I focused on my character? I would say yes, more than the average person, is what I would say. More than the average 25-year-old man is what I would say. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't.
That's what I was implying, by the way.
Yeah. And then 26 happened, and then 27 happened, and then I really went all in on personal development, Kevin, hyperconscious, understand, awareness, all that happy jazz. But yeah, no, I had very, 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 very little professional development. I was almost like the opposite. I was like not anti-professional development, but I didn't want to be like that. Because I never...
Well, I think you saw what that came with. A lot of times it comes with being disrespectful, looking down on others.
I was disrespected by people who were super professionally developed.
Which I
was like, I'm not gonna be like you. You're shitty, and I don't want to be shitty.
Here's the question: Is there a way to be unbelievably professionally developed and still a really good human being?
Of course, yeah.
It's hard though.
Well, it depends.
It's challenging to be both. That's all.
I think it depends on where you start from.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it depends on where you start from. I don't know. I only know the way it was for me. It was personal and then professional. But having the foundation of personal, I think, really, really helps with professional. I don't know if it's the other way. I don't know. I would ask you, does being super professionally developed help when it comes to personal development?
No. I don't think so. If anything, it hurts because you're less relatable.
So
I think it's harder to go from that to the other.
I would say probably.
As someone who, and again, even saying this is hard, but like I went to one of the best tech schools in the world. And I flourished there in academics, blah, 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 right? Master's in business. Awesome. Even saying that, I like have to lessen it because it's such a thing. Mm. It's very hard to go back. Like, when you've been in the room with the CEO of a $1 billion robotics company and you talk to those people and that's your normal, you just lose perspective. You don't mean to. You just, like, again, please don't villainize me for sharing this. But like early in Kevin and I's career when we were broke, my like worst case scenario was like go make $150,000 on the side consulting. Mm. And so you lose, if you're not careful, you lose humility because everything wins.
Yeah, it's fair.
And especially in tech. Like technology is running the world. So if you're in tech, you just win. When I was at some of those companies, Kev, those people were not well developed personally at all. And they still win. So think about what that does to your psyche.
Mm-mm-mm.
And then they use the fact that they're successful against their wives at times, or, so there's that dynamic. And again, not always wife. Sometimes it's female, male, but most of the time. So I would say it's harder. I wonder what I would be, who I would be if I didn't have such tremendous adversity. Because being as very, very intelligent makes you, it's harder to empathize because you've never experienced what it's like to not have a bright future in a way,
I don't because that wasn't my experience. But one of the things I'm going through right now is I'm trying to, and we'll hop after this. I'm trying to, every time I have a new experience that kind of sucks and it's not an ideal experience. Like, I really wish that didn't happen. I try to flip it and say, well, that will help me empathize with someone who's going through something like that I've never experienced.
Yep.
It's perspective. There's a lot of perspective in that. But I very much appreciate you sharing because that's very vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable thing to share, and I know there's a lot of stuff that comes up when you share that. And again, that's the thing about being very, very professionally developed is some people will villainize you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like being very, very personally developed, some people will villainize you for that too. We tend to villainize what we are not.
Because we're insecure about it on some level.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Or we've been harmed
because
by it.
or you've been hurt by it tremendously.
You've been hurt by it.
Yep.
If you've been hurt by it, then you're most likely gonna villainize it. And again, from a human standpoint, it kind of makes sense, right? It's like fire burns, fire equals bad. But
I don't want to be fire, right?
But you also can't cook your food then.
Yep, exactly.
If you're villainizing fire, you can't cook your food if you're out in nature and an early human.
I know we got to jump. Can you tell them about the resume quickly?
What
and
about
again,
it?
This is not just the fisherman thingy.
Oh yeah. So
I think that's great. And by the way, I want to make it clear I'm not making fun of Kev.
No.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
this
we're
is
good.
really illuminating for everyone because
we will never talk about something publicly if it's like if it's either of us making fun of the other person. Like, we've already had enough discussions behind the scenes that I knew this was
I just
happen.
don't want people thinking that I'm like trying to air you
No,
out.
no,
I think
you're
it's
good.
funny, and I also think it's very illuminating how far you've come.
I appreciate that very much. There was
I doubt you'd put that on your resume these days,
I don't even know how I would do a resume. Like, what is this giant gap? It's like, well, we started a podcast and like a business and stuff. It's like I talk into a microphone for a living. I don't know. Maybe that'll help. So there was, I don't know. I think I read somewhere that you should introduce something about yourself. Like, talk about yourself a little bit, your personality. So there's 3 lines. One says, I am, oh my God. One was, I am an avid fisherman. So I want you to know that if you hire me for this job, I will probably be calling out and going fishing. The other was, I enjoy exercise.
Every nice day?
Nice day.
I'm sick.
I enjoy exercise, and I do so daily. And then one of the other ones was, I practice martial arts and am strong in Muay Thai, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. I applied for a security job. I thought I was going to get the job for sure. Like, I can kick their ass if they steal something.
100%.
Evidently, that's
I can also catch a mean bass.
I can catch a bass if we're out in nature and we need to eat. I can lift heavy things. You need to hire me. All right, we got to go because I have a call. Tomorrow for episode number 1663, it is Freestyle Friday. Again, we don't know what we're going to talk about, but you will see the title when you look to see the episode. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Stay ambidextrous. Next Level Nation.